everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations and a lay counselor, and with me today is the wonderful Tim DeNock of Break the Meta. And also, we do have Eric with us in the background, although you may not see him, but he's here. And today, we had a little bit of a late start because we were trying to see if it was possible to somehow advertise this particular broadcast, but apparently that can't be done until it's done. So, like, I was sad. So, or maybe at some point we'll be able to do that. I don't know. Maybe if you're watching this and you have tried to do stuff like this before, you know a workaround to the situation, and we'd love to know what that is. But for the moment, I guess that won't be happening this time. So, oh well. But welcome to today's broadcast, where we'll be talking about specifically unity through diversity. And this one has been really important to me, not because that seems to be the general focus of this country time and time again by one side or the other on the political spectrum, but because I have been running, as I've been telling you guys every time we start the broadcast, I run a separate community called United Gamers Nations, or I call it UGN. And I've been doing this whole community for, what is it? It's been 9 years. 9 years or 8 years? I think 9 years. It would have been, if it was 2013, maybe, okay, so maybe it would have been like 8 years. Anyways, for a long time. And over the years of running this online gaming community, we've had a lot of different people come through with all different sorts of backgrounds. We've had people from different countries, such as Singapore and England, come to be a part of our community. We've had people from all different parts of the United States come to be a part of our community. Different religions come to be a part of our community. We've had Muslims be a part of our community. Of course, we've had people that are non-religious, atheists and agnostics come to be a part of our community, but just all different types of people have come in and out, and some of them have stuck with us as well. And we're not talking just Christians have stuck. We've had people who have want nothing to do with God come, and they're now a permanent fixture, a part of UGN. And so since I've had this experience for years, and plus I've been a part of different types of communities that have been culturally diverse, such as Agape Faith Christian Academy, Agape Faith Church. I went to Christian Academy, but a faith church, or Awake, where I'm going presently. I just really wanted to go and dive into what unity through diversity looks like. And I specifically worded it like that because I think oftentimes people want unity through conformity, and that's just not actual unity. And so going into all this, I wanted to first take a second and define what I'm specifically talking about when it comes to, oh, you came up as Break the Meta. That's interesting. Hey,
a little shameless plug-in.
Oh. Anyways, I wanted to define what am I talking about when it comes to unity and diversity. And I unfortunately did not think to, before this point, come up and find the specific definitions. I need to do that definition of unity. So I like to go over what the dictionary says about the topic, and then I like to go over what we believe about it. So according to the dictionary, the definition of unity is the quality or state of not being multiple, oneness, a definite amount taken as one, or for which one is made to stand in calculation, which is like a sub-definition. Or, here's a good one, a condition of harmony, accord. So that's what the definition of unity is according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary. What would you define unity as, out of curiosity, Tim?
Whenever I think of Unity, I think about doing a raid in a video game. Everybody's got the same goal. We go about it different ways, and people are in different job classes or roles or whatever. Like somebody might be a healer or a tank or a DPS, but the goal is still the same. We're trying to beat the monster, you know. So I guess it's just heading in the same direction with the same goal, regardless of how different our backgrounds are.
Yeah, and I sometimes think about Unity, the gaming engine. When I think of Unity, but that's not actually the definition. That's just me being facetious. But I do think about it.
Just
But
brown.
facetious. For me, I think of Unity as, again, through that introduction of Unity through diversity. I feel like Unity has to do with people coming together from all different backgrounds to achieve a particular goal, or they come with an overarching like belief. Not to say that all their individual beliefs are the same, but if you were to bring them all together, they would have a common goal of working together towards making the world a better place, typically. Either to be loving more peaceful, whatever, but the goal, there is like an overall goal that a whole bunch of people will come behind
Mm-hmm.
and support it together, even though they each have different views on how that goal is to be achieved. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I look at that. Do you have any other differences of thought towards Unity, Eric? If you're there. Maybe you're not. I guess not. Oh,
I was similar to yours.
oh, you kind of broke in and out there. What did you say? You just said similar to ours?
Yeah, my definition would be fairly similar. A group of people, though different in how they act, unified or similar in the goal that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Okay. And so what would then be the definition of diversity? Because I'm curious. Definition of diversity, according to the Merriam-Webster. Diversity. The condition of having or being composed of different elements, variety, especially the inclusion of people of different races, cultures, etc., in a group or organization, or an instance of being composed of different elements or qualities, an instance of being diverse. Um, so yeah, I think that kind of, in a way, that kind of gets, you have different cultures, you have different races being mentioned here, but honestly, also, you could also be said that you have composed of different thought processes. Again, as we're defining unity, I don't think unity doesn't just necessarily have to do with simply just race and also culture, but also diversity in thought of how to achieve the unity. So whereas one person may believe that in order for us to continue to head towards the goal of, let's just say, uh, the goal is to make a cake. I don't know. One person may believe that in order to make this cake, it needs to look a specific way. Another person may believe that it needs to look a different way. Unity would then bring them together, and they would be able to work together through their different visions for the cake to then make the cake even better than it would have been if it was just two separate people making their own cake. Just thinking of like a generalized example.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's pretty solid, though. Otherwise, in general, being encapsulating diversity, it's like you're having different people that don't look like you from cultures you didn't grow up in, and I think also having like different ideas and how to attain or achieve the goal of what they're unified under
Mm-hmm.
would be another part to diversity. Do you see anything different that I'm not seeing in this, Tim?
Well, I keep thinking about video games today for some reason.
I love
But
it.
okay, so I play two games, League of Legends and I play Final Fantasy 11. One game is a MOBA. It's where you have two teams and they battle each other, and then the other one is an MMO where you go through the game with other people, you defeat monsters, different raids, and you get gear. And I'm just thinking about diversity, um, and all throughout the different life cycles of different metas. And what I mean by that is different meta standing for most effective tactic available. There are different metas that people use during different patches. So, for instance, if they buff mages, it's a mage meta. If they buff tanks, or if they buff junglers, there's a certain meta that people play by that just works the best, right?
Right.
But then you find other roles that are often ostracized because they're not quite as effective, or they're not as easy to play, or as enjoyable to play.
Yeah.
And in Final Fantasy XI specifically, there are I don't know, like 15 or 20 different job classes, and some of them don't see as much play. Like when I came back to the game recently, black mages and I think summoners and rangers, just you never see them.
Yeah.
But they still have a place in the game. They have a different play style. They offer different bonuses. They appeal to different players, right?
Yeah.
And I remember as I first started playing the game, there was a certain meta. You would have the tank that would keep the monster like focused on it. You'd have people dealing damage, DDs, damage dealers. You would have a mage healing and a mage supporting. That's how it was. And then you'd have classes like Beastmaster, or Puppet Master, they just didn't have a role. They were solo classes. So oftentimes, because they didn't make the goal of getting to the unified point more achievable in a more efficient fashion, they didn't have a place, which is a metaphor for a lot of stuff that's going on right now. And it's also a metaphor for relationships. So I guess, diversity is just looking at things from a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, yeah. In and of its core, like, if you're just looking at it from, like, a personal standpoint, not even just from a community standpoint, but from just a personal standpoint, looking at life from a different perspective than that of your own. And it's achieved through having different types of people in your life primarily. But, yeah, that would be an important way of putting it. You already got ahead of me. I was about to get to that. So the next thing I wanted to go into was why do people want unity and they want diversity, but they're still afraid of it? Or specifically, you broke it up into different parts, which was, do you think people want unity or diversity or both? So I guess we could kind of go from that bullet point specifically. So since you asked that question, I'm asking you that question, Tim. Do you think people want unity or diversity or both?
That's a good question. I think it depends on the maturity of the person, because the people that I see in my own personal life and the people that I look up to and that I follow, the people that I try to stay away from, they have different perspectives on it.
I wasn't ready.
It seems like the people that I want to follow and the people that give me the most peace and I have the most confidence in are the people who want both unity and diversity, or at least on the face, because it's tough to actually walk that out, because when there's diversity, you can't please everybody.
Right.
You won't please everybody.
You just won't.
Just like going back to the Final Fantasy thing, like you have some people that just want to get in the group and get to the goal as quickly as possible. Then you have people that want to get in the group and enjoy the process, even if it's kind of circumventing the normal mechanics, So I think people want unity in the sense of they want relationships where they feel understood.
Right.
But diversity, I think that's the tough one, because, as we'll get into later based on your questions, diversity can be really tricky when you don't hit it with a sense of maturity.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be. What are your thoughts, Eric?
Oh, I have many, many, many thoughts on this one, my friend.
Oh, good.
So many. As someone who, you guys know, like one of my main goals in life is to see everyone around me get along. I value unity as one of the most important things, because it's really what you build a life and a society on, is unity, is being able to work together without, killing each other.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm coming from the perspective of an American who's grown up in a different country. I've seen lots of diversity, and I've come to terms with the fact that people have way different experiences, and they look at life very, very differently. But I also understand the fact that some people were born in a small town, or they were born in their place and they grew up in their place, and all they knew was their place, their people, people who were like them, who thought like them, that acted like them. And so they are generally uncomfortable with diversity. And so, as someone who's very comfortable with diversity and works very hard for unity, getting people to understand that unity is not uniformity is paramount. And I think it really starts with listening, with genuinely caring about the people around you enough to listen to their perspective, whether you agree with it or not, to genuinely listen, to genuinely care about what the experiences of the people around you are. And I think the more that we can teach people and show people that, like, it's okay to, like, disagree with someone on important stuff, you can still get along with that person,
Yeah. You're definitely jumping into what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, because this is something I think about all the time. It's like, how can we get people to go along, to get along with each other? Because I think there's kind of this fear when you have a weekly, and not bi-weekly as in like week, but week as in unstrong. When you have a not strong view of the world, anytime something that differs from you, how you process the world, anytime something like that comes into your view, you're instantly going to be afraid of it because you don't know if it's going to hurt your view or if it's going to hurt you, kind of like how if you got a small town of all ethnically homogenous people and someone from a different ethnicity moves in, it's like, well, who's this person? Are they going to, rob us and do whatever? It's like, well, they just don't know. And we're at the point, especially here in America, that, like, we're so mixed in races and backgrounds and religions and whatnot that we just can't afford to be afraid of everyone who looks and talks and whatever different from us. We're kind of unique in that, compared to other countries that are more ethnically or whatever, racially homogenous.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think, that being said, I do think that the average person wants unity, but they have the hardest time with the diversity. Because, like, at least in America, while we may be racially intermixed, which ironically, from what I've heard, it seems to be more so here on this East Coast than it is on the West Coast from some of the things I've heard. A little bit surprised about that, but I learned a few things. And maybe it's only localized in California for all I know, but at least I heard some things about California. Either way, I think that people, maybe we may be more racially and culturally mixed, but I think a lot of times people have a hard time with the diversity aspect at the end of the day. Maybe not so with race and culture, although that is what's very pressed right now. But more so with differences of opinion, people have a harder time in those areas. Because there's, like, ideological camps in the United States. You have the diversity camp, which ironically is all about diversity, but, like, if you don't be diverse as they are diverse, then you are looked at as the enemy.
Well, thinking about that, Brandon, I just keep thinking about confirmation bias, because as you've been talking and as Eric was talking, I'm like, okay, there are some people who do not want diversity. It makes them very uncomfortable. We like being in our circles where we're comfortable because we don't like being challenged. But then you have that other camp you're talking about where it's all diversity, 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 but they only want diversity from the position of being around people that also want diversity, not the diversity of people that don't want diversity. So I don't know. I think that a level of comfortability and lack of challenge comes from not wanting diversity, because it's not comfortable,
No,
like
it's
if you
not.
go to a school and I'm just thinking about middle school, man. There were so many new kids that I met in middle school from all around, because you had elementary school, elementary school, elementary school, and then you had a middle school. They all came together from different neighborhoods. Different neighborhoods had different demographics. Different demographics within those neighborhoods have different financial status and whatnot. And it was kind of like a culture shock to me, and I just wanted to go back to having my best friend on my school bus and the dude that lived on my road. Who are all these other people, and how do they know each other? What do you mean people live in big houses? That was so crazy to me. I had no clue, and that was, oh man, it was so strange, because their normal would have been my exception when it came to finances. And that was super uncomfortable when I got around them. They would talk about things, and sometimes it was intentional. Most of the time, I would assume it wasn't intentional, but it just made me feel bad, because my identity was attached to my position in life.
Well, it's got to be said that real diversity and being unified under that is hard. It's not easy. It's not as easy as to say that we're going to now make this be a thing, because, like I came into a situation that was culturally, the culture of it, or at least the ideology of what I came into, was already set, and then I came in as the one kid who was an only child, who was mature for my age but loved video games, and the rest of the group wasn't quite. And so I just kind of was like, hey everybody, and then everyone was like, no, and that was kind of like the reaction of it. And so it was kind of the outside of it for my middle school years. It sucked absolutely, and it didn't make sense either why it was like that. But like, it's hard to bring that person that thinks differently and has grown up differently into your flock, because they will touch things that you normally don't touch, go places you normally don't go, say things you normally don't say. And it's like, these are all threats to the
Yeah.
person who grew up and this is the way the world was ordered up until that point.
In high school, Miss Hobbs, she was our guidance counselor, gave me the opportunity to go to this leadership conference, and I think it was in Raleigh or Chapel Hill. No, it was in Chapel Hill. And it's my first time being overnight, without my parents, at some place like that, in an event like that, And the whole conference was about diversity and being leaders in the new generation for diversity. And obviously I dealt with insecurity back then, especially social insecurity. But I was like, yeah, I want to change this, because it sucks, because I feel it every day. But I remember going there, and the first day they put us in this big conference room, and there must have been like 50 or 70 of us kids in there from different walks of life. And our whole like point for being there was we wanted to be diversity leaders in the new world, right? And I guess we were hand chosen and picked out by the guidance counselors for this, maybe because they were looking for demographics or whatever. I don't know, but I was just watching the room, and I was guilty of this too. But you would start to see little cliques form in this group of people that wanted, or apparently, or vying for diversity.
Yeah.
There was one girl out of all those people that would go around to the different groups saying, "Hi, my name is so and so," right? And I was like, wow, something is really strange about her. Like, why doesn't she just pick a group and stick with that group like everybody else is doing? So I think we do want diversity, but going into the second question, or the second part of the question that you posed, basically you said, do people actually want diversity or unity, or both? Do they fear it? And like, how do people want it even though they fear it? Because like, I think my fear in that was thinking that just because I walked into uncharted waters, that I wouldn't be good enough, or like where in my level of comfort, whatever degree that is, in my life, as far as I can control it, I'm struggling just to be comfortable there. How I can't even, it's not on my radar to go over here in this area of diversity and feel comfortable. That's really scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, Eric.
You really have to risk being an idiot in order for a diverse group of people to be unified. And I think that's one of the major inhibitors to diversity. And I'm not talking about like forced diversity. I'm just talking about just the natural diversity of life. Like if you don't know about someone's culture or someone's upbringing, the only way you're going to find out is either if you're really, really smart and really perceptive and you can just pick up on that stuff, but most people aren't that perceptive. I know I'm not. So, like, for most people, you have to ask people, like, hey, why do you do this? And, like, I've been thinking about this, like, while you guys were talking about how, like, social niceties, and etiquette, as important as they are for setting up a way that people act so that everyone is being treated with respect, they can also inhibit that that unity, because it's like I don't know, because I'm a white guy, and if I go up to like a black person and ask them like, hey, why do you guys do XYZ? Why do I see so many black people doing XYZ? I'm risking them thinking I'm racist or just like a complete jerk, when it's like, no, literally, like I am breaching these social niceties because I legitimately want to know about your experience and why people from your demographic act in XYZ way. So it's like you gotta, in order to think and be unified, you have to risk stepping on people's toes. And to step on people's toes, people can think you're an idiot or a jerk, and those are scary things.
Well, I was just thinking about this last night because we went to Charlotte to this bowling alley, and I was telling you guys about this beforehand. We went to this bakery, and a great guy that was the owner of the shop, I'd imagine. He was a white guy. And, he gave us free coffee, gave us free cookie, just back and forth conversation. I asked him about the bowling alley across the lane or across the way that we were going to go to. I was like, you ever been there? He's like, yeah, it's okay. I was like, oh, well, what do you think about it? And he just looked me square in the face and he was like, there's a lot of black. I'm like, what? And I'm just thinking about like the diversity there. Like in his mind, it's like, well, that's completely separate than me. And that being over there and different is bad. Right. And as we were at the bowling alley that night, I remember seeing a family, and it was a black family. And the guy had his pants hanging down, and it was the father of the kids. And I was looking at the kids, and, the kids had their pants pulled up. And I was just thinking, I wonder why that is, because my first inclination is to be like, man, just pull your pants up, right? Because that's not my norm, right? Like the whole there's a cultural slang that they use, like that how it be, things like that. And I was reading this article about communication and stuff, and this teacher was getting onto this kid for communicating that way, right? But on the English tests, the kid did perfect grammar and everything. But basically, the whole concept was when the teacher and the parent had a back and forth, the parent was just communicating, "Hey, this is a cultural thing for us. We're not stupid. My kid knows how to spell. My kid knows how to speak. It's cultural." And I think that's kind of interesting, because from my perspective, stuff like that irritates me, because my standard of excellence when it comes to stuff like that is like, this is how it should be. From my limited bubble of confirmation bias. But if you look at actual diversity, if I get outside my head and take, as Eric was saying, risking being an idiot to my bubble of confirmation bias, I realize, wow, okay, well, they're doing it for a reason that makes absolute sense. Whereas in my bubble of confirmation bias, I'm just making an assumption about who they are.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, like, I feel like I at least want to take 1 second to touch on, like, what are the different reasons. I know we've talked about this, but just to make sure that they are clear, the different reasons why people try to avoid diversity or don't want to dive into it. Because, Eric, you'd mentioned that, there's risk involved when you're trying to, like, understand someone of a different race or culture. Like, you have to ask them flat out, like, why do you do this? Why do you think like this? Whatever. What are these actions all about? So they, like, I'm sure fear would be one reason that keeps people out, like fear of rejection,
Yeah, absolutely.
fear of pain, fear of what's the word? Not isolation, but specifically but when people like pull away from you, what's the word? It's not isolation.
Rejection.
Rejection, yes, but there's another word.
Separation.
Ostracized. Being ostracized. That's what I'm trying to say. So fear. Fear would be one reason. I guess pride could be another reason. Like if you've got like everything in your box and like everything is ordered in your box and your box to you is perfect and nothing else should fit into said box, that would probably be another reason why people would have a hard time being diverse, because by being diverse their box will no longer be perfect, and that hurts. I can imagine. So I feel like pride would be another thing that prevents people from actually being diverse. There are other things that I'm not thinking of here.
I think a big one is just being narrow-minded, because when you grow up with a certain set of standards and ethics or what you believe to be ethics or whatever, it's like, okay, well, this makes sense and this is a truth to me, and that's how you get into the whole what is that thing where everybody has their own truth or whatever? There's a word for that.
Universalism.
Yeah, it's like, well, this is my truth. Like we were watching some YouTuber or whatever, and the girl, she was a large girl, intentionally, right? And as it was a documentary, and she was being interviewed, and she said, "My goal is to be the fattest woman in the world." She wanted to be 1,000 pounds.
Wow.
Right? I'm like, it's just like, how do you? Oh man. But it's like, okay, well, from your limited worldview, the little bit about what her whole perspective, when she was asked, why do you want to do that? She said, well, I like the idea of just being a queen, people serving me. If you go back to the olden times, the bigger you were, the more wealthier you were, the more respected you were. I want to be that. But it's really easy to see when you watch it. Oh, okay, so basically you just want to be lazy, and this is my assumptive mind, my logical mind, my analytical mind, based with my worldviews, making an assumption based on her life. It's, oh, well, okay, so you just want to be lazy, and there were. She was affording her habit to eat 6,000 calories a day because she would have followers that would send her money to eat food. And
Wow.
in return, she would send them videos and pictures of her in scantily clad stuff. Right. Kind of like the whole OnlyFans thing. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, just thinking about, okay, well, if diversity is, it's like, well, why does she, just stepping into her life thinking, okay, well, why do you think this? Instead of judging her like, oh, you think this. Later on in the show, she actually, she got pregnant. She was having a kid, and she was like, I actually don't want this lifestyle anymore, because her worldview and her narrowness shifted to be wider. So I think that might have a large portion to do with it, because we get fooled into thinking that we figured it out.
Yes, having limited perspective, just you were born in this area, you were raised in this area, and by God, you're going to die in this area. I have a whole set of family members that kind of grew up with that mentality, and I don't understand that. My mom almost kind of ended up in that, but then God had other plans for her, and so we've been all over the East Coast and have lived in different places. But interesting. So I guess that would be reasons that would be that would come against diversity. Why people don't want diversity, and it probably also answers the questions like, why do we avoid new people? Because that was one of the things that I had in there as well. But so moving forward and considering the time, why? Now, one of the things I've noticed is that oftentimes when it comes to diversity, and I'm putting binary code into Discord on accident. Anyways, oftentimes when people want to have diversity and they want to have unity, it seems that also that they want to have people accept their beliefs in order for them to be welcomed into the group. And I don't, this is something that I've seen in this country, at the very least. I think it's probably in plenty of other places, but at least in this country, like I see that there's these idolized ideals that like we want to obtain these ideals, and they're grand. Like again, unity and diversity is prized in America. Like people, it's almost like an idol in America. But those who don't necessarily like those ideals end up getting ostracized. And it's like, we want diversity, but if you do not also want diversity in the way that we define diversity, then you're cut. You're not going to be part of this diversity, apparently, or this unity. And I find that oftentimes the people that have different beliefs of what it takes to be unified with diversity can often be demonized because it does not exactly fit the belief system. So the question that I wrote down was, why do we want others to believe as we do in order to accept them? Why is that a thing that, like, in order for me to be accepted into this unified, diverse group, I must also ascribe to all of the bullet points that you think are necessary to obtain the goal of unity? Like, why is that a thing?
Why do we want others to believe as we do in order to? I think it's just because it makes it so much easier, and it doesn't challenge what we stake our lives on. Because coming at it from a Christian standpoint, since we're talking about beliefs, that's like one of the most. If you ask somebody what your belief is, oftentimes people go straight to a religion of some sort. So a lot of Christians, from what I've seen, are really afraid of specific questions and specific points of view. Like, well, what about this? Or what about this in the Bible that doesn't seem to be true? Or if God is who he says he is and he wants to relate, how come he's never just appeared and sat on your couch? Or why did God do? And, sometimes there aren't cut and dry answers for things that we believe, and I think having stuff like that tested is really scary for some people because it shakes their foundation. It's like, okay, well, this thing that I'm standing on, whether it's a perspective on finances, a perspective on people, perspective on where I want to live, what I want to do with my life, what I want to believe with religion, like, somebody is always going to have a better point than you about why you're wrong. Somebody's always going to have some kind of perspective. And if it's not a point, they're going to have enough passion to make a point, So why do we want others to believe as we do in order to accept them? I think it's just because, by nature, I think we're lazy creatures. We don't want to put in the work because if you think about relationships, the best relationships are the relationships that have gone through the most trial, that have had the most work put in, where each person knows, hey, this person is, putting their chips on the table or whatever. But all the relationships that I've had in the past that were the easiest were the ones where there was no conflict. Oh, well, you want to go here? Okay, we'll just go there, even though I want to go this other place. And let me just build this resentment. And then all of a sudden that relationship just disappears, And, I think that might also have a basis or a foundation in, how people see their identity as well. Because when you don't really understand who God is and who you were created to be, a lot of people put their identity in certain things that can and will be shaken. And there's a lot of fear there.
Yeah. I think it has a lot to do with also fear. Again, this is coming from my perspective. If you know me, you know most of my life, I've struggled with anxiety and had to come through that, and I've grown and become better with it. But for me, like, if there's any reason why I've ever not felt like accepting someone because they didn't believe as I did, it's because my mind boiled the overall objective to stay together down to, it has to look like this. And if it does not fit within this limited parameter, there's going to be issues and things are going to fall apart. And I wonder how many people also, maybe it's lazy, but maybe also are just afraid that because, like, I think one of the things is that I've had a fear of is that with this person coming with this different opinion, they are going to subvert and destroy everything we've worked so hard to build.
Mm-hmm.
And that their belief is going to pollute the everything that I've been working on. Because, like, okay, let's take UGN again. Look at that from a perspective. When we first started, within the first year, we had a lot of Christians come to be a part of UGN. And the ultimate goal of UGN was to be a safe place for people to come and be a part of and be ministered to through video games. And just have fun together while we're playing games. So that was like the initial goal. Within the first year, God began sending agnostics and atheists, and some of which are still just don't want anything to do with God. But they started coming in, and in the initial part of this, I believe there was probably some times where I was just like, oh my God, like this person begins sharing, like specifically, I have had some people that have shared political beliefs on UGN that I absolutely do not agree with. And my knee-jerk reactions in those first times as they began to share that was, oh my God, I don't want other people picking up this belief, and then there's going to be issues, and it's going to inhibit God in some shape, way, or form, or something. I don't remember. It's been a while since then. But just like I had like these specific fears. I'm like, oh my God. And then with time, I began to realize, like, okay, they're going to believe what they're going to believe anyways. And it's not my job to protect what people believe. It is my job to help them when they come and ask questions and to guide them in the right direction. And it is definitely my job to root out people that are legitimately trying to destroy the community by creating strife and by manipulating people. But if it's just them expressing their belief and they understand our own and they're still willing to be there, then really not a big deal. But definitely fear and anxiety was a problem for me, and why and there was some times where I came heavy on people about beliefs until I began to realize that it's not a big deal. That why I wanted to have that uniformity in belief in UGN and in general. So we got laziness, we got fear. I feel like there's going to be some recirculating themes here. Probably pride.
Just thinking about it also, you remember the episode of SpongeBob? How Squidward went into the Squidward community with all the other Squidwards?
Yes, I do.
I love that episode so much because he thought, oh, well, I'm going to go in this place where there's a lot of confirmation bias. Oh, they have canned bread. Oh, no, interpretive dance or whatever. And then over time, he's like, I actually hate this,
Yeah.
And then, he gets the leaf blower and he starts going crazy, and all of the Squidwards get mad at him because he challenged their way of life. And I'm just thinking about how, your question was, why do we want others to believe as we do in order to accept them?
Yeah.
I guess to kind of expand on how I said it's laziness, honestly, I think it's our unwillingness to change because, I'm just thinking about my wife, and, a lot of times she has such a better perspective about certain things that I do, and she challenges me in good ways. And I hate it. Because I know that when she challenges me in a certain way and I'm actually doing something wrong, if I admit that she's right, then it just makes sense. Oh, okay. Well, Tim, you admitted that she's right. And well, where do you go with that? If she's right, you should change, but I don't want to change. That's the thing. It's like if I welcome somebody into my group that has a difference of opinion, and especially if I'm a leader of a group in some capacity or whatever, or if there's comfort in how we do things and there's a routine, I know how much this costs financially. I know how much this costs time-wise. I know how much this costs relationship-wise. And then something comes in, a different perspective, and it's truth. There's a truth that comes in, right? Something that proves to be true, and it shakes everything. It's like, great. We need you buy a house and you have X amount of dollars to redo everything, and you get started. The inspector comes in. He says, actually, there's asbestos. All that money you had to you now have to spend that on getting the asbestos removed. It's like, that's not fun. I don't want to do that. That's not comfortable. I wanted to do this thing, And in the past, I've seen construction shows where people just paint over the asbestos or do whatever. because they don't want to do the healthy change. Now, I think,
Rip lungs.
Huh?
Rip lungs.
Pretty much. But, I think that's a big part of it. Like, if we accept somebody into our circle and they have a difference of opinion that's true, it just makes sense that we would need to change that thing if we're believing improperly. But I think we hold people at arm's length with their perspectives because, well, I don't want to change.
You made me realize something about myself that I knew, but I had forgotten about because I've transformed over the years. But I don't like changing either. Like, I don't. But I've become comfortable with it because I've been working on myself. So in the end of the day, it turned into the reason why I didn't want to change is because, one, it's work, but two, also, sometimes people want me to change, but they've manipulated me. So that I've made all this effort to change only to find out that it was for their benefit. And so, therefore, I became afraid of change because I don't know, like, if someone wants me to change, if I have to come to a place where I accept I'm wrong, like, it's a gamble because could this be the time where I change, but it wasn't necessary and it was just someone else's laziness that wanted me to change?
And then it's all that wasted time and effort.
Yeah. But deep down, I also don't enjoy it if I don't have to. I've learned to get used to it over time.
Yeah.
The next question that I want to go into is we've talked about, okay, what is diversity, what is unity, and we defined those things, and we looked into after that point, like do people actually want diversity and unity, or there's a one or the other kind of thing? Like, what are people actually wanting? And we kind of looked into, like, people probably want unity, but they don't really want the diversity necessary to make unity as strong as it can be. And we went into reasons like that. And then we started to talk about, like, why people would want you to accept their beliefs before they accept your diversity. Like, why people kind of, like, they put these conditionals onto things. But now I think the question that needs to be asked is, do you have to accept or embrace what others believe in order for them to be a part of your group? Because I think that needs to be addressed, because moving forward, like, how do you go about that? Like, is it necessary that I have to accept all of your specific beliefs before you can be a part of my group? Because honestly, I don't think that you have to accept and embrace what people believe. I think it comes down to, do they want to be a part of your group? What are your core standards that you're trying to strive towards? And are they willing to adjust to that? Because if they are, then they're already opening the door for you to adjust to the areas where their beliefs coincide with your own. But I'm already beginning to answer that question. But what are your thoughts on? But I want to hear both you and Eric, the two of you. Do you have to accept or embrace what others believe in order for them to be a part of your group?
No, absolutely not. I have, okay, I don't want to be like, I have so many friends, but I do have a good amount of friends, and like a lot of them I disagree on very, very basic philosophies and ideas of how the world works. Like, very, very different. I have loads of people that I'm friends with who aren't Christians. People with vastly different ideas on, basic stuff like, okay, is abortion wrong or is it not? I have loads of friends who think abortion's perfectly fine. I think it's murder. There's just a lot of differences that I have in opinion. And, like, on things that people consider very, very important. But I think, like, once you realize that people don't really threaten you, then you can be friends with just about anyone, outside of, people who are really actually trying to threaten you. I'm not saying go make friends with the mugger that's trying to stab you and steal your wallet, but, like, once you realize that someone having a different idea than you or having a different way of processing the world than you isn't going to hurt you at all, like literally at all, then you can generally make friends with just about anyone. Like their views might disgust you, but when you value a person as a person rather than what they believe, I think there's a difference there. And you can be friends with a lot more people, and you can even be friends with people and completely work against what they're working towards. Kind of like frenemy type deal, you know? But you'd be surprised who you're capable of getting along with when you don't feel threatened by someone just because they disagree on important issues.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point. The idea of realizing that nobody can actually threaten you. But Brandon, I would love to do a thought raid on this question specifically because it's such a big question, because there's a lot of perspectives here. It's like, well, what exactly quantifies the size of the group or community, right? Do I talk about community as me and my wife? Do I quantify that as friendships? Do I quantify that as, our Wednesday group? Like what exactly? Because the question is, do you have to accept or embrace what others believe in order for them to be part of your community? Biblically it says that we got to be careful about being unequally yoked.
Right.
But at the same time, like I have a ton of friends now. I'm of the belief that, I don't believe that God favors homosexuality or transgenderism or abortion. That's my personal belief. But I have tons of friends who are of the LGBTQIA plus community, right? And that are on the left as far as being pro-abortion or whatever. Because, on one hand, if you think about how Jesus lived his life, those are the types of people who had a different perspective than him that he hung out with, right? But I think it's such a tricky question because based on how intimate the relationship is of the community or of the group, it has to be governed by different expectations and standards for this.
I definitely, we could definitely spend tomorrow even just breaking down that specific question into parts. But yes, I think that what you do accept depends on what circle of community it's in. So for instance, in marriage, one of the most tightest communities possible, and in your family, your immediate family, having more unity of belief would be important, or particularly between a husband and a wife. That is perhaps the most important uniformity, to have. Because and not to say, and even then though, because I'm not looking to marry someone who believes exactly as I believe. When it comes to Christ, yes. When it comes to the core values of that Jesus came, died on a cross for our sins, and his blood covers our sins when we accept his sacrifice, and that he's coming back again. When it comes to core beliefs, that's important. But cultural differences, stuff of that nature, not so as important to me, because that the difference in culture can enrich my life. Having similar interests and stuff of that nature, that would be important, so we'd have a connection point, and mutual attraction is important as well. But I would feel like that area would probably be the most where you would want to have more unity and belief. But then as you go a bit bigger from that, you go in from your marriage to your family, to your community, to your church, to the whatever, as you continue to expand outwards, I feel like at that point it would very much so depend and change. I don't think you would have to have the same beliefs, but I do think that probably what is important is this person willing to work with the standard that we've set? Because that's how I run things with UGN specifically. You don't have to believe what we believe, but are you willing to work within the confines that we've set? And if that's the case, then it doesn't matter what you look like or what your culture is or what your beliefs are. I'm willing to accept you into UGN. Are you willing to work with people? Are you willing to love people? You know, are you willing to do you enjoy video games? You know, stuff, you know, stuff of that nature. Like if those are things that work well and you're willing to, you know, come under those confines and under that leadership, sure. But when it comes to something more intimate, such as a relationship, I think that needs to be much more of a tighter thing. Because literally, it's two people. Literally.
Well, you know, just thinking about this concept as far as interacting with another person, you know, a common theme that you and I both agree on is that it's such a travesty when you put the value of a circumstance over the value of a person. You know, we're called to look at the person's value over any circumstance there is. So if somebody came up to me at our Wednesday group, you know, we had somebody a while back that said, you know, I'm on the left. I'm actually for abortion. I'm for this. My position was, well, you know, there is a truth here. You know, you don't have to defend the truth. You're supposed to speak the truth. But, you know, the truth is what sets you free. The truth is the foundation. You know, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and life. You know, the truth is never going to change. Right. And so if somebody's pursuant of the truth, well, you know, they'll find it eventually. And I think the most important thing is just as far as accepting or embrace somebody in your community that has a different belief. I think it's really important to accept those people as long as they have an open posture, because there's a difference between accepting somebody and having them in your circle and like talking to them. You want people that have an open posture saying, okay,
Right.
well, let's pursue the truth. Like what actually, okay. So, let me consider this. The whole
Right.
diversity. There's the unit. Here we go. University. Unity and diversity.
Diversity.
Right. But when you have somebody that has a difference of opinion, they come into your group and they're like, nope, my way. It's like, you know, do you actually want a relationship with me? Because you're putting the circumstance over who I am.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that like just kind of, and this will go into the last question because I think it is, how do you have / maintain unity with people who don't look like or think like you? Like, how do you have that unity? I think to have unity, you have to have that unified cause, and it needs to be known and defined.
Mhm.
Because if you don't have a vision for what you're trying to unify people for, then anyone can come in and the vision can be, what weak, shaky vision you have can be lost forever. As everyone's going to come in with their individual beliefs and standards. And so if you have a well-defined, this is who we are, this is what we're going for, do you want to come and be a part of that? Then people have the option to come and join, or to not if they don't like what you stand for. I don't think the vision and the original purpose of whatever the united cause is should change. I think it could be added to maybe, but it should not be completely just tear that down and get rid of that stuff. Unless it's just you end up finding that it's absolutely terrible. Likely, if you put the time to think about the vision that you have for the cause and you've talked about it with other people and then you establish that, it's probably not going to be changed ever, or should be. And so then you what you do in that case is you open the door and like, okay, here's who we are, here's what we're heading towards. Do you want to come and be a part of this or not? You have the right to do it, and then be prepared, because you're going to have some people that are going to walk through that door and they're definitely not going to look like you, and they're definitely not going to talk like you. But if your vision is well defined and they know that coming in, then that's something you're going to have to begin to work with. Because, you know, they've signed up for that. They've seen this is what we're coming in for. They know that they're coming into that. I have friends that know that I am a conservative and a Republican, and yet they're still friends with me. They know that, they've accepted that, and so we're able to be friends because I know that they're a Democrat and they're liberal, and they know where I'm at, and so we can just be friends, because we both accept where we're at, and we can have open dialogue about our differences. But if I were to be in a situation where someone is not okay with me being a Republican and a conservative, I can't readily keep that. That would be against not only the diversity but also the unity, because it's like you're now not allowing me to have my specific beliefs and who I am, even though it may seem like it's contradictory to what you think is necessary to get to your own goals. Like, like,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Brendan, I think this is a lot easier in circumstances, because the question is, and I think our verbiage when I wrote down the question is a little bit different than what you had written down. But how do you maintain unity with people in circumstances of difference? I think that's easier, much easier, in situations where we elect to have the relationship. But in situations and circumstances where we don't elect, for instance, jobs, or getting into a car wreck with somebody and having to converse with them, or just being, I don't know, at a store during Christmas and everybody's packed in there and like you're trying to reconcile differences with people,
Or being born into a country.
or that, yeah, it's a lot harder. And Luis said adaptation is the key to commingling with people regardless of religion and beliefs. I want to take that a step further and just say listening. Because a lot of times if you look at the life of Jesus, when he met people that were different than him, one of the first things he did was listen to them. Like, who touched me? He didn't say, "Oh, you touched me," and this. Like when that lady came up and just touched his cloak, he said, "Who was it that touched me?" Like, well, why'd you do that? And he said, "Well, by your faith, you were healed." Jesus had all the answers, but he didn't give the answers to everybody, and he didn't run around touting a flag that said, "Believe in my Father." It's the people that came to him, like that prince that came to him and said, "I want to get into heaven. What do I do?" And he said, "Give away your treasures." Right? He didn't seek that guy out and say, "Hey, dude, give away your treasures." It was the guy that came to him and said, "Hey, I want to go where you're going. How do I get there?" And Jesus was like, "Okay, well, what do you mean?" Yeah.
And I will say, though, there was times where Jesus was flat out preaching to people. Like, I don't know whether they invited him or not, but he did preach in synagogues just as much as he did preach on the streets or talk to people that came to him. So there was times where he was going out and actively letting people know who may not have asked what his beliefs are. That's just a thing that happened.
Well, also synagogues, though, already had a predetermined goal. And when he was preaching on the hill, all the people came from all over because, that's essentially the precipice that he had chosen to speak. But I don't know. I mean, I'm open to being corrected on that if anybody has any cited situations.
I mean, more often than not, though, to be fair, more often than not, people came to Jesus and they came to him for specific reasons because they heard about him. But there was a definitive point where Jesus was getting himself established and letting himself be known to people that he existed. And there was times where he was in situations where he just flat up, he just upended an entire tradition, by adding on and saying, like, I am the reason for this entire tradition. Like when there was some certain festivals that he was in, and he just stood up and declared, I am the person that you were all having this tradition for in the first place, and he made that no one asked him to do that. He just made that declarative statement. And then he was in, again, all that. Now, the times where we typically do see Jesus proactively doing things, it's often, if I remember correctly, without people coming to him, it's in and around the church. But I remember thinking specifically where he was at the temple and he just up and turned over the tables and made a mess of things and stuff. He didn't have to do that, but he did that. So he definitely we got some big stuff coming in. He definitely was changing some things up there. Not no one was coming to him. He was going and making himself known. So I've seen both.
It was, quote, his father's house.
Yeah.
It was his property.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, granted, yeah, but you also could say the Earth is his and everything in it is his.
What did Louis say here? Personally, it sounds a little unfair to the person who needs to answer the question. The answer to who needs to answer the person in question. The problem with society today is that when it comes to religion or politics, there will almost always never be an agreement.
Yeah.
For the same reason why we have Democrats and Republicans, they can never come to an agreement on anything. Most other countries' status are in much better position morally and socially, not just financially and politically, but resource and humane wise.
And then we have Stormy. My brain hurts. Who are you and how do you know my name? You've been here many times. I don't know what you're talking about. But
yeah, you know, Luis, I'm sorry, Brandon. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You.
I was just gonna say, you know, when we look at things like the presidency, the reason there was a lot of debate and a lot of like back and forth, a lot of social media, whatever, during the election is because it seems like a huge thing, right? Like who's going to lead this country? And for the normal you and me and Brandon and Stormy and whoever else is watching, for the normal person, the idea that we can control the outcome of a nation is overwhelming, especially when those things affect us. You know, and so it's easier to join a party that said, well, you know, are you for abortion? Are you against abortion? I'm sure there are Democrats who are not for abortion. I'm sure there are Republicans who are for abortion, you know, but it's just so that's, you know, if you go back, I think 2 or 3 months ago, we did a thought raid on labels.
Yeah.
I think it was a couple months ago.
Somewhere.
But it's so much easier when it comes to big things just to jump into one of the label groups because they've already got momentum. But starting something fresh, like when Jesus started his ministry, he started fresh, man. You know, he went to a fisherman and said, hey, dude, drop your nets, follow me. You know, he chose a couple people and then poured time and love into them and said, go out into the nations, right? He didn't just join First Assembly of Wake Forest Synagogue. You know, he started his own because he had his own convictions. But that's why they can never agree on anything. It's because, you know, I have trouble saying that I'm a Republican because there's some Republican things that I disagree with. I'm more apt to say, well, honestly, I'm an independent because I want to follow Jesus. And neither of those parties, if you look at the parties as a whole, are following Jesus. To me, it seems like one follows him more. But you can't really label a whole group of people of Democrats saying you're not following Jesus because I'm sure some of them are.
Yeah.
But but that's the difficult thing. You know, it's just having the open posture, being willing to listen, and that's the mark of a true leader. You have to be able to listen, even though you have a difference of opinion.
Yeah. He says, Jesus thought of us as an investment when providing to others and our planet. I think even more than an investment, like I think the ways that Jesus looks at us is very valuable. Because, you know, when we accept Christ, we become children of God, and that didn't just happen. You don't just transform from trash to child. So I feel like more than an investment, I feel like it's almost like he looks at us already as children. And it's just deciding, are we going to be children of the earth or children of heaven and children of God through accepting Christ. But yeah, I don't know. Just kind of thinking it back about the topic again, about, you know, having unity and all that kind of stuff, and with diversity and stuff. I don't know what exactly to say about situations where we are born into something we didn't choose. I feel like in those situations, my goal would either be to work within the confines that I have or to find a better place. But in the situation where you're establishing something, like let's say you're establishing a community, I feel like to have both diversity and unity, it's important to have an established vision and a goal. And once that has been once that has been made apparent, people know what they're getting themselves into, then you just kind of allow them to decide, do you want to be a part of this or not? And then you work with them. And if they come and they're a part of it and they're not going anywhere, and they know what they're getting themselves into, I think part of having that diversity is then taking the time to get to know the person, to ask questions like you were talking about earlier, Eric, and to take risk of, this could hurt me, because the fact that I'm very unaware of what this person is like, what they believe in, things that nature, and I maybe say something that's inappropriate or offensive to them, but, to take that risk and to get to know who they are so that you can better help them. I have a couple of community members in UGN that I have grown and adapted to get to know them so that I can better help them and better work with them and see, how can I best integrate them with the rest of us, rather than just flat out, I don't like your abrasive side, get out of my community. I've put up with them over and over again, and not just put up with them, but actually taken the time to get to know them, ask them questions, and then change my own self so that way the community could be more harmonious towards the goal of being a united gaming community. So there's been some times where I've had to be confrontational, and there's been some times where I've had to apologize, and there's just been a lot of different things, but a part of the vision and goal of UGN was not who comes into the community, but rather what the community is guided towards. And I think that's really important when it comes to having unity and then diversity. I think there's a point to going out and finding different types of people, but in general, they have to know what it is that they're being welcomed into or invited into.
I think this will finish up my thoughts on this, and you can keep going if you have more, Brandon, because I think you were going somewhere great with it. But going back to the analogy that I used earlier, Final Fantasy XI, whenever there would be new content that's introduced to the game, whether it's quests or whatever, nobody's ever done it before. Where do you go? What items do you need to finish this quest? How do you do it? What monsters do you kill, etc.? And whenever that would happen, there were always two different parties in the game that would explore things. You'd have the Americans, the English speaking people, and then the Japanese. Those are the two demographics in the game, right? And they always had wildly different ways of doing things. In League of Legends, you had the Americas, and then you had the Koreans. And they always had different metas that they followed. Like if you go on League of Legends forums or whatever, and you look up different item builds and whatever for the characters, there's something called the Korean spec. It's what all the Koreans are doing that's wildly different than us, but it's super effective. And I'm just thinking about how in certain situations the Japanese in Final Fantasy XI would figure stuff out way before us Americans would because of how they did things. And sometimes we'd figure it out first. If you go back way back in the day to Kodak and Polaroid, you had two camera companies whose goal was to further the camera technologies, right? And because they had different research and development processes and whatnot, they were always comparing notes, and there was that push to keep moving forward. Right. Think about the space race with, Russia, the U.S.
Yes.
and all the other. There was a unified goal, but with different perspectives, different resources available. And I don't know. I just think it's fascinating because if we just had one perspective,
right,
there would be no push to move forward. There would be no what's the word? There'd be no sauce in the mix.
Right.
It'd be boring.
Right. You need that differences of opinion and difference in background in order for it to be effective. The people that obtain the goal are the people that learn how to work with different types of people. Because they will bring to the table their pasts and what they have learned and seen and experienced, and then you'll have other people bring theirs as well. And if you can be humble throughout the whole process and to listen to what both sides are saying, and then to take from them what they're saying and find if there's ways to integrate, or if they're constantly saying something, to take a little more of a look at that. Okay, why do you keep saying this? Maybe I've been overlooking this. We would have to do definitely a separate thought rate just to look into all the nuances on how to properly be diverse and how to properly be unified. But there's definitely a component of humility in there, of just the necessity to listen, to hear, and the people that do manage to be properly diverse and properly unified do get to the goal fastest. Because you look at it, the Bible is really strong about this. We are all a part of the body of Christ, and we all definitely have different functions, and a body to work properly must remain connected. You know, if the entire body was an eyeball, how would it hear? If the entire body was an ear, how would it see? You know, if the entire body was a foot, how would it grab things? Like, it's just, everyone has specific roles, and that is a concept that is in the Bible, that is brought out in the New Testament, especially. And so that's the important part, is to learn to be appreciative of the differences in people, to celebrate the differences of their culture and background, and to learn to speak their language, whether they actually are speaking English but use different words for different things, or they are legitimately speaking another language, but taking the time to kind of learn about them, so that way you can then properly lock arms with them together and achieve something greater than you would have been able to if you just had to make them conform into your box, and how this is supposed to be belief-wise, this is how it's supposed to be race-wise, culture-wise, whatever. Like, I really do think that the strongest groups, the strongest communities, are the ones that understand people's differences and celebrate the differences, truly. And I really appreciate the relationship that I was in last a couple years ago, because in that relationship is where I began to learn the necessity and the importance of embracing the culture in different people, and to understand it in order to best work with them, rather than trying to fit them into your specific box. I think every place has areas where they're off and they know it, and you're able to work through that. But there are a lot of areas where they're not, and it's just a cultural difference. And you need to learn that and be humble to figure out the difference. So, yeah. So, yeah, well, that is sometimes people do come together, yes, unfortunately. But there are other times besides just wartime that people come together. But that will be for another thought, right, I think. You were going to say something, Tim?
I was just going to say that's a good point, because when people are forced to have a bigger perspective, there's unity.
Yeah.
Well, otherwise they're just focused on the small things, and the fewer big things are the small. It's almost like, you know, people's perspective just shrinks over time. And when they're forced to get bigger, it's like, oh, I need more people to focus on this.
Yeah. That's like, in that sense, I'm glad that that's why I'm kind of happy for 2020, because it's definitely forced a lot of new perspectives and stuff on me that I would not have had otherwise if it wasn't for the necessity of the stress that it was putting us under. And it was stressful. And I really don't think we're through the forest yet when it comes to stresses that started in 2020. But anyways, I do want to close it out since we're going close to an hour 30 at this point. So yeah. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Laughing in the background. I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun. We broadcast every week on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will, of course, be again live tomorrow at 4 p.m., but we will also be live again at 7 tomorrow, where we'll be having a prayer night. So if there is anything that is on your heart that you would like for us to pray about, Eric and I will be together praying for you guys on stream, and we'd love to have you there to join us. That way we can really just kind of cover whatever worries, whatever problems, whatever it is that's on your heart. It matters to us. So we definitely want to invite you to be there for that. That will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we will still also be going live tomorrow at 4 as well. And so with that said, the only other thing is, if this stream has really blessed you, I would like to encourage you to invest into us. We have a Patreon, and the link for that is in our description, and it is also on both YouTube and Facebook. So if you follow that link, we have different ways that you can subscribe to us, and all the money that goes into Thought Raid will be used to help improve the quality of the stream, bring on different people that can help grow the community, and also to be able to travel and minister in different places besides just online. So we would love to have your investments, but I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll see you again tomorrow, 4 p.m. You guys have a good night.